Most people wonder if they will ever become wealthy, yet very few stop to ask a more important question: am I walking the path that leads to wealth at all? The truth is, wealth leaves signs along the way. If you know how to recognize them, you'll know whether you're headed in the right direction. This is Earl Nightingale speaking. Wealth, as with anything worth attaining, does not arrive by accident. It comes to those who deliberately prepare themselves for it, who discipline their thoughts, and who shape their lives around principles that cannot fail. If you want to know whether you're on the path to wealth, look not at your wallet, but at your habits, your thoughts, and your daily actions. These are the signs that tell the story of where you are going. The first sign is that you think in terms of value. Money is only the shadow of value, never the source. When a person asks, "How can I serve? How can I solve a problem for others?" he or she begins to open the door to wealth. For wealth is nothing more than the reward we receive for rendering useful service. Another sign is the ability to live below your means. This is the foundation of all fortune. The person who saves a portion of every dollar and invests it with intelligence has already separated himself from the majority who spend without thought. This is discipline, and discipline is freedom. The third sign is the pursuit of knowledge. Every wealthy person I have studied treated success like a subject in school. They read, they listened, they studied human behavior and economics. They understood that ignorance is costly, while knowledge, applied knowledge, builds fortunes. The fourth sign is vision. Where others see obstacles, you begin to see opportunities. When the world says problem, you ask, what is the solution worth? It is this shift in thinking that transforms setbacks into stepping stones. Another unmistakable sign is patience. The wealthy think in decades, not in days. They build brick by brick, decision by decision, compounding effort just as interest compounds in the bank. And then there is emotional mastery. A person who cannot control fear or greed will always be at the mercy of those who can. Wealth requires steady hands, calm minds, and the ability to stay the course when the crowd panics. These signs may seem small, but taken together they reveal a destiny. You are either walking toward financial independence or drifting away from it. Remember, this wealth is not a place you stumble upon. It is a road you walk every single day. So the question is, are you walking that road? If you find yourself practicing these signs, continue with courage. If you do not, begin today. Wealth is built in the quiet hours, in the daily decisions, and in the steady direction of a mind committed to growth. The path is waiting. The signs are clear. All that remains is for you to take the next step. To think in terms of value rather than money is to align yourself with one of the greatest truths of success. Money is never the cause. It is always the effect. It is the echo of value rendered, the shadow cast by service well performed, the natural reward of usefulness to others. Those who chase money directly often find it elusive, slipping through their hands like sand. But those who set their minds on value, on making life easier, richer, or more meaningful for someone else, discover that money comes unbidden, like a loyal companion following close behind. The human mind is remarkable in its capacity to create, to imagine, to solve, to contribute. When this capacity is directed toward serving the needs of others, it unlocks a kind of wealth no bank can measure. Think of the great fortunes of history, built not on greed but on service. Henry Ford gave people affordable transportation. Edison brought light to the world. Countless men and women have built prosperity by finding ways to add what others needed most at the time. They thought in terms of value, not merely the currency in circulation, and by doing so, wealth became their inevitable harvest. When you think in terms of value, you begin asking a new set of questions. Not, how much can I earn? But, how much can I give? Not, what's in it for me? But, what difference can I make? This shift in thinking transforms your mind into a workshop of ideas, because opportunity hides in the needs and desires of people. Every complaint is a clue, every inconvenience a hint, every struggle a signal pointing toward value waiting to be created. Money flows as the certificate of appreciation for value delivered, but it always arrives second, never first. To live this principle, one must learn to see the world differently. A business owner who thinks only of profit cuts corners, diminishes trust, and chases customers away. But the one who thinks of value creates loyalty, commands respect, and builds something lasting. An employee who works only for a paycheck does only what is required, yet the one who works to increase value, to learn more, to do more, to contribute more, soon rises above the rest, for the world always rewards the uncommon contributor. There is a law in nature as sure as gravity: whatever we give returns to us multiplied. By giving value, we create a current that must circle back, often from sources we could never predict. Those who fail to understand this law spend their lives running after the effect while neglecting the cause. But those who grasp it place their focus where it belongs, on value, on growth, on service, and trust that money, like the shadow of a tree, will appear when the tree itself has been firmly planted and nurtured. To live below your means and invest the difference is to grasp one of the simplest yet most powerful disciplines that lead to wealth. It requires no special talent, no secret knowledge, and no extraordinary advantage. It asks only for understanding and consistent practice. Most people confuse income with wealth. They believe that as long as they earn more, they are progressing, yet their lifestyle expands with every increase, leaving them no further ahead. True wealth is built not on what you earn, but on what you keep and wisely put to work. The person who makes modest income but saves and invests faithfully is on firmer ground than the one who earns handsomely but spends lavishly. It is not the size of the paycheck that matters, but the direction of your habits. When you live below your means, you take control of your financial life. You choose discipline over indulgence. You free yourself from the chains of debt and impulse. You give every dollar a purpose, and in doing so, you begin to build the foundation of independence. This does not mean living in deprivation, but rather an intelligent restraint. It is the conscious decision to enjoy today while preparing for tomorrow. Most people exchange long-term security for short-term pleasure, but those who live below their means reverse this trade. They sacrifice little comforts now for great freedom later, and in time, they discover they have not given up anything of true value, but gained everything that matters. The second part of the principle is equally important to invest the difference. Money saved but left idle is like seed stored in a sack. It has potential, but no harvest. It must be planted wisely with patience and understanding to multiply. When you invest, you put your money to work for you, so that one day you no longer need to work only for money. This is the turning point between those who remain in endless struggle and those who achieve financial independence. The world's wealthiest individuals are not those who spent the most, but those who allowed their resources to grow quietly in the background, compounding year after year. There is a quiet dignity in this practice. Each time you save and invest, you are declaring mastery over your impulses and choosing your future over fleeting desires. You are creating a silent partner that grows stronger with every contribution. One day, it begins to provide for you in ways far beyond what you sacrificed. And the irony is this: by living below your means, you do not shrink your life, you expand it. You create options, opportunities, and the ability to seize them when others cannot. You exchange dependence for freedom, worry for peace, and uncertainty for security. Wealth is not a sudden windfall or a stroke of luck. It is the steady accumulation of disciplined choices, the quiet compounding of small acts practiced faithfully over time. To study success as if it were a subject in school is to treat life with the seriousness it deserves. Most people drift through their days without a plan, without a compass, believing success to be a matter of luck or circumstance. They spend years mastering their trade, learning their craft, or practicing their art, yet they rarely stop to study the principles that govern all achievement. Imagine a student attending school for a lifetime but never opening the textbook. Such is the way of the average man or woman who hopes for success without ever studying its causes. Success, like mathematics or music, is a subject with laws, patterns, and truths that can be learned, understood, and applied by anyone willing to devote the effort. Every book, every lecture, every biography of a great man or woman is a lesson waiting to be studied. When you treat success as a subject, you begin to notice the common threads that run through every story of achievement. You find discipline, clarity of purpose, persistence in the face of obstacles, and a willingness to grow beyond comfort. You discover that wealth, happiness, and influence are not accidents but results of deliberate actions guided by timeless principles. The library becomes your classroom, the words of thinkers and doers become your teachers, and your daily life becomes the laboratory where you test and refine what you learn. The person who studies success consistently holds an advantage over those who do not. While others rely on trial and error, stumbling from one failure to the next without insight, the student of success progresses with direction. He knows why he failed, what lesson is hidden in the failure, and how to correct his course. He does not waste years repeating the same mistakes, for he has studied the roadmaps left behind by others. In this way, he compresses time, moving further in months than most do in decades. The very act of study shapes the mind. It reminds us daily that growth is possible, that improvement is within reach, and that the limits we perceive are often self-imposed. It instills humility, for no matter how much one has achieved, there is always more to learn, always another insight to apply. And it cultivates curiosity, that spark which keeps the mind alive and engaged. To study success as if it were a subject in school is to assume responsibility for your own destiny. It is to recognize that while the world changes, the principles of achievement do not. They were true 100 years ago, and they will be true 100 years hence. When you commit yourself to learning these principles, applying them daily, and refining them through practice, you place yourself among the minority who live deliberately rather than accidentally. You join those who understand that success is not bestowed, but earned through knowledge put into action. To see opportunities where others see problems is one of the rarest and most valuable qualities a person can develop. Most men and women are quick to complain, to point out what is wrong, and to retreat when obstacles appear in their path. They imagine that difficulty is a signal to stop, that problems are burdens designed to weigh them down. Yet the truth is that every fortune, every invention, every advancement in history was born out of a problem. Opportunity is rarely wrapped in shining paper. More often it comes disguised as trouble, waiting for the mind sharp enough and brave enough to recognize its hidden worth. Consider the great industries of the past and present. Each began because someone faced a difficulty and instead of shrinking from it, asked the question, how can this be solved? When cities were dark after sunset, Edison saw an opportunity. When transportation was slow and limited, Henry Ford envisioned a car that every family could own. Problems that discouraged the majority became stepping stones for the minority who trained themselves to think differently. They looked at the same world as everyone else, but their eyes were searching for solutions, and in those solutions lay the seeds of wealth and progress. The person who sees opportunities in problems has mastered the art of perspective. He does not deny that difficulties exist, but he understands they are invitations to growth. Where others see inconvenience, he sees potential. Where others complain, he begins to create. This mindset turns adversity into advantage and frustration into fuel. Life itself rewards this way of thinking because society is always in need of solutions. Every time you solve a problem for others, you add value, and every time you add value, you open the door for success to walk through. Most people make the mistake of asking, why me, when problems arise. The one who thinks differently asks, what can be done? That shift in questioning makes all the difference. It turns the mind away from helplessness and directs it toward innovation. This is why those who achieve greatness are often described as visionaries. They simply saw what others were unwilling or unable to see, and they acted on it. There is a quiet power in this principle. It does not require brilliance beyond reach, only the discipline to train the mind to look for solutions instead of dwelling on complaints. When practiced, it becomes a habit, and soon every challenge is met with curiosity instead of fear. Problems become puzzles, and the one who solves them earns rewards that go far beyond money, rewards of growth, of confidence, of the satisfaction of contribution. The world is full of problems, but hidden inside each one is an opportunity, waiting for someone prepared to uncover it. To focus on long-term growth rather than short-term comfort is to take the higher road that few are willing to travel, yet it is the very road that leads to freedom, abundance, and mastery. Most people live in pursuit of immediate gratification, trading tomorrow's security for today's fleeting pleasure. They eat what they please, spend what they have, and act according to impulse, believing comfort today is all that matters. Yet this approach always exacts its price, for neglected discipline today becomes hardship tomorrow. The wise man, on the other hand, sees further down the road. He understands that comfort is temporary, but growth is permanent, and he willingly endures small sacrifices in the present for the promise of greater rewards in the future. Every towering oak was once a small acorn buried in the soil. Growth takes time, patience, and persistence, and so it is with a person's financial, intellectual, and spiritual life. Those who build true wealth do not ask, what can I enjoy right now? But rather, what can I build that will serve me and others for years to come? They live with foresight. They put aside a portion of every dollar, they invest in learning, they discipline their bodies, and they strengthen their minds. They may seem to deny themselves pleasures others take for granted, but in reality they are securing pleasures far greater than momentary indulgence could ever offer. Short-term comfort whispers ease, but long-term growth promises freedom. Comfort may say, spend this, enjoy this, relax now, but growth says, save this, invest this, work now so you may rest later. Comfort says, avoid the challenge, but growth says, face it, for in it lies your strength. In the contest between the two, growth always wins in the long run, though only those with vision and discipline choose it. The principle is simple but not easy. It requires delayed gratification, the ability to say no to what is convenient in order to say yes to what is meaningful. It requires the courage to walk against the current, to endure misunderstanding from those who cannot see beyond today. Yet those who follow this principle discover in time that they live in a different world than those who chose comfort. Where others struggle with debt, they enjoy independence. Where others are limited by poor habits, they enjoy health and vitality. Where others wonder why success never arrives, they look back and see the steady harvest of years of quiet, deliberate effort. Growth is never loud or spectacular in the beginning. It is subtle, almost invisible, a matter of daily habits compounded over time. But just as the seasons follow one another with certainty, so too do the results of long-term growth appear for the one who persists. By choosing growth over comfort, by choosing vision over impulse, a person secures a life that is not only successful but significant, not only prosperous but enduring. To control your emotions, especially fear and greed, is to gain mastery over the very forces that determine success or failure in every field of life. Fear and greed are the twin tyrants that govern the masses, pushing them to act rashly, retreat when they should advance, or leap when they should stand still. They are ancient emotions, rooted deep within us, once useful for survival but often destructive in the modern world of decision and opportunity. Fear whispers of loss and danger until a person becomes paralyzed, unable to move forward. Greed whispers of gain and riches until a person rushes blindly, grasping at shadows. Between these two extremes lies the steady ground of reason where true achievement is built. The wise individual understands that emotions are powerful servants but dangerous masters. To fear is natural, but to be ruled by fear is to live half a life, retreating from opportunity, refusing the call of growth. To feel the stirring of greed is natural as well, but to let it dictate decisions is to step into the traps that have ensnared countless men and women through history. Fortunes are lost when fear drives people to sell in panic or when greed lures them to chase what glitters without substance. The road to wealth and peace belongs to those who remain calm while others lose their balance, who think clearly while others surrender to impulse. To control these emotions does not mean to destroy them, but to recognize them, to pause, and to think before acting. Fear can alert us to danger, but reason decides whether that danger is real or imagined. Greed can remind us of ambition, but wisdom determines whether the reward is worth the risk. The difference between success and failure often comes down to that quiet moment of control, when a person chooses to act with discipline rather than emotion. History shows that the greatest investors, the greatest leaders, and the greatest builders all possessed this ability. When markets crashed and crowds panicked, they stood firm, guided by principle rather than hysteria. When opportunities appeared too good to be true, they did not allow greed to cloud their judgment. They trusted the compass of patience and knowledge, while others trusted the shifting winds of emotion. Each of us faces these same forces every day, not only in money but in relationships, in health, in personal growth. Fear will tell you not to try, that failure is too great a risk. Greed will tell you to take shortcuts, to seize without giving, to grasp without earning. To control them is to hear their voices but not obey them. It is to use them as signals but never as guides. The man or woman who learns this discipline discovers freedom, for no longer do emotions dictate their fate. Instead, reason and principle chart the course, and in the calm waters of self-mastery, success becomes not a matter of chance, but of certainty. To be consistent in small daily disciplines is to hold in your hands the quiet secret of greatness. Success is rarely the result of one dramatic act or a sudden stroke of luck. It is instead the accumulation of small, deliberate choices repeated over time until their weight tips the scales of life. Each day offers us dozens of small decisions, so insignificant they seem to carry no consequence. Yet the truth is that each of these decisions is like a seed planted in the soil of time. One day, without warning, the harvest arrives, and it is either abundance or scarcity, depending on what was planted. The difference between the successful and the unsuccessful is not usually intelligence, talent, or circumstance. It is the willingness to repeat the right actions daily, even when they seem dull, even when no one is watching, and even when the results are not immediately visible. Reading for 15 minutes, saving a portion of income, exercising the body, practicing gratitude, writing down goals. These actions by themselves may appear too small to matter, yet multiplied by weeks, months, and years, they shape the destiny of a person. The tragedy is that most people underestimate the power of the small. They neglect daily disciplines because they do not see instant reward. They believe greatness requires something grand when in reality, it requires something steady. They forget that just as drops of water carve canyons and bricks build cathedrals, so too do simple disciplines construct a life of strength, wealth, and peace. Those who succeed understand that every day matters, and that consistency is a force greater than intensity. A burst of effort may bring attention, but steady effort brings transformation. There is comfort in this principle because it places success within the reach of anyone willing to be faithful to it. You need not perform miracles. You need not possess extraordinary genius. All that is required is to do the right things a little at a time, over and over again, until they become habits. Habits then form character, and character determines destiny. The smallest effort, repeated faithfully, builds momentum, and momentum carries a person further than willpower alone ever could. Those who neglect small disciplines fall into another law of the law of drift. Just as small positive actions lead upward, small neglects lead downward. Missing one day seems harmless, then two, then a week, and soon the discipline is forgotten, replaced by ease and complacency. This drift is invisible at first, but its results are as certain as those of consistency. Success is never owned. It is rented, and rent is due daily. The person who understands this lives differently. He treasures each day as an opportunity to add one more brick to the structure of his future. He knows the great cathedral of his life is not built in a moment of inspiration, but in the quiet laying of stones, one after another, without fail, until the structure stands unshakable against time and circumstance. To associate with people who inspire growth is to place yourself in an environment where your best self is constantly called forth. Human beings are profoundly influenced by the company they keep, often without realizing it. The thoughts, attitudes, and habits of those around us seep quietly into our own, shaping the way we see the world and the way we respond to it. To walk with those who are complacent is to grow complacent yourself. To dwell among the bitter is to become bitter, and to spend your time with the fearful is to inherit their fears. But to walk with those who think boldly, who dream greatly, and who strive diligently, is to rise to their level through the natural law of association. Every life is a reflection of the standards it accepts, and our standards are influenced heavily by the people closest to us. When you surround yourself with those who demand more of themselves, you cannot help but demand more of yourself as well. Their words challenge you, their example stirs you, and their vision lifts your eyes beyond the horizon of ordinary living. Growth becomes not merely an option but a necessity, for their very presence reminds you that settling is not an acceptable way to live. Throughout history, those who achieved greatness rarely walked alone. They had mentors, companions, and communities that reinforced their values and sharpened their thinking. Iron sharpens iron, and the mind sharpens in the company of minds greater than its own. To spend an evening in conversation with someone who has achieved what you seek is worth more than years of drifting without direction. Their stories, their struggles, their triumphs, and even their failures provide lessons that textbooks cannot capture. But this principle works in both directions. Just as the right company can lift you, the wrong company can drag you down. Small minds talk of complaints and gossip, while great minds speak of ideas, possibilities, and principles. You cannot expect to cultivate a spirit of excellence while immersing yourself in mediocrity. To grow, you must be willing to choose your company deliberately, even if it means walking away from old associations that no longer serve your highest purpose. This is not selfishness, it is stewardship of your life and destiny. To associate with those who inspire growth does not mean they must be famous or wealthy. It may be a teacher, a colleague, a parent, or a friend whose integrity, discipline, or vision compels you to stretch beyond your comfort. It may be the authors you read, the voices you listen to, and the communities you join. Every influence you allow into your life either lifts you higher or holds you back, and the choice is always yours. By surrounding yourself with those who live by principle, who speak with clarity, and who act with conviction, you ensure that your own life will move steadily in the direction of growth, for no one can rise above the level of the company they consistently keep. To use time wisely, treating it as your most valuable asset, is to recognize the one resource that can never be replenished. Money can be lost and earned again, possessions can be taken and replaced, but the hours and minutes of a day, once spent, are gone forever. Each person is given the same 24 hours, yet the difference between the successful and the unsuccessful is found in how those hours are used. To waste time is to waste life itself, for time is life measured out moment by moment, and the way you use it determines the direction of your destiny. The wise individual understands that every minute carries value, whether it is recognized or not. Time can be invested in study, in meaningful work, in nurturing relationships, in building health, or in quiet reflection, and each of these investments multiplies over the years into results of great worth. But time can also be squandered on idle distractions, on needless worry, or on pursuits that neither educate nor enrich, and in that case the loss is permanent. The difference between building a future and drifting through life lies in the discipline to guard time as a treasure and to spend it only on what matters most. Those who succeed rarely speak of having more hours in their day. They simply make better use of the hours they have. They prioritize with clarity, focusing on tasks that move them closer to their goals. They avoid the trap of endless business, mistaking motion for progress. They understand that 10 minutes of concentrated effort is worth more than hours of scattered activity. Each day is treated like a bank account with a fixed deposit, and the question is never how much can be spent, but how much can be wisely invested. To treat time as your most valuable asset also means saying no to the trivial. Opportunities, distractions, and demands compete constantly for attention, but the person who values time weighs each one carefully against the cost. They ask, will this contribute to my growth, my purpose, my well-being, or the service I render to others? If not, they release it without regret, for they know that every yes to something insignificant is a no to something essential. This way of thinking does not make life rigid but purposeful. It allows room for rest, for recreation, for joy, but even these are chosen with awareness. Rest becomes renewal, recreation becomes inspiration, and joy becomes gratitude, because they are pursued deliberately rather than by accident. To live in this manner is to feel the richness of every hour, to know that no day was wasted, and to build a life that compounds like interest, growing stronger and more fruitful with each passing year. The person who learns to value time above all other assets discovers that they possess the very key to wealth, achievement, and fulfillment, for he who masters time masters life itself. To believe that wealth begins in the mind before it appears in the bank is to understand the true origin of prosperity. Every building, every invention, every enterprise, every fortune the world has ever known first existed as a thought, an idea, a vision in the mind of an individual. The unseen always precedes the seen, and the inner world of thought shapes the outer world of results. A person who thinks in terms of lack, limitation, and defeat can never hope to experience abundance, even if opportunity knocks at the door. But the one who trains the mind to think in terms of value, growth, and possibility will find that circumstances begin to align with that vision. The mind is the soil, and thoughts are the seeds. Just as a barren field will never yield a harvest, a mind filled with fear, doubt, and negativity will never yield wealth. But a mind cultivated with ideas of service, of creativity, of discipline and persistence becomes fertile ground for prosperity to take root. The greatest difference between those who succeed and those who fail is not found in background, education, or resources, but in the dominant thoughts they carry each day. What a man or woman thinks about most of the time is what they move toward, and what they move toward eventually becomes reality. When you believe wealth begins in the mind, you take responsibility for your inner world. You guard your thoughts as carefully as a banker guards gold. You feed your mind with books, with ideas, with the company of people who expand your vision. You refuse to dwell on limitation, for you know that limitation in thought soon becomes limitation in action. You imagine the life you want clearly and with conviction, and then you align your daily behavior to match that image. This is not wishful thinking, but purposeful thinking backed by action. The image held in the mind serves as a blueprint, and the actions taken in the outer world begin to build upon it, brick by brick. History is filled with examples of individuals who began with nothing but a belief. They held a picture of success in their minds when no evidence of success existed around them. Slowly, through persistence and faith, that image hardened into reality. This is why wealth is often lost by those who inherit it without first cultivating the mindset to sustain it, and why it is often created anew by those who had nothing but an idea and the determination to bring it forth. To believe wealth begins in the mind is to recognize that the true battle is internal. Once the mind accepts abundance as possible and deserved, the actions necessary to create it flow naturally. The person who carries poverty in thought will remain poor regardless of income, while the person who carries wealth in thought will find ways to manifest it regardless of starting point. The mind is the workshop of fortune, and it is there, long before the bank account reflects it, that wealth is truly made. We have walked together through the signs that mark the path to wealth. We have seen that true prosperity is not an accident but the natural result of thought, discipline, and direction. It begins with the way you think, valuing service over money, living below your means and investing the difference, studying success as if it were a subject, seeing opportunity in every problem, and choosing growth over fleeting comfort. It is strengthened by mastering your emotions, practicing small daily disciplines, surrounding yourself with people who lift you higher, and treating time as your most precious asset. And above all, It is secured by understanding that wealth is first conceived in the mind before it ever appears in the bank. These are not theories, but timeless laws that have guided every man and woman who has built a life of abundance and significance. The signs are clear, the path is open, and the choice is yours.